Welcome to the garden. Today I want to showcase my brand new terrarium. I made this in a really tall jar. Here's my tiny terrarium for some comparison. Now, before I show you how I made this, I want to see if I can get a terrarium in a terrarium. And because this one's kind of a two-in-one, it's kind of a terrarium inception. Terrarium in a terrarium in a terrarium. The little terrarium in the cap here, which is our third terrarium, so to speak, is actually kind of drying out a little bit. It was doing really well, really healthy, filled the jar, but now it's starting to get a little bit dry and a little bit thin. And the rest of it's kind of growing a little algae, but it's still going. It's been an interesting little project. But let's see if we can fit this in here. I can just get my hand in the jar, and oh, this is going to be hilarious. It's going to fit, I think, right next to our little tree. I'm going to be gentle, because I don't want to hurt the moss. Wow, there it is. There it is. A terrarium in a terrarium in a terrarium. That's terrarium inception. Now that we're into autumn, it's just a matter of time until the entire garden is covered in a foot of snow. So I'm going to start a brand new terrarium. I'm going to try and keep it really simple this time, with just one nice variety of moss and a nice little spruce. I think an evergreen will be a nice touch, and by picking a tree, hopefully it'll get nice and tall to really fill this jar. We're going to do a false bottom of rock and charcoal, and then we're going to make a little special soil mixture. A false bottom provides a nice buffer in between any standing water at the base and that soil. I'll start with a little bit of potting mix. I'm going to try and save some of the soil here from this plant. So I want to do quite a bit of perlite. We'll do just a touch of sand. This feels really nice. Now something you might want to consider is adding some charcoal. Charcoal is actually porous on a microscopic scale. It's actually the cellular structure of the wood. Everything burns away but that carbon lattice. So you get this incredibly complex microscopic sponge basically, and that can actually absorb impurities. It kind of draws the water in and filters it around. And this I just collected from our fire pit. Any standing water could eventually go foul, if not for the charcoal. Now the last ingredient I'm going to add is something special just for our moss. I've kept this in a bag for the last week or so, but if we take a close look, you can see pine needles kind of suspended inside. This was growing underneath a pine tree, so I'm actually going to add some spruce needles in with our mixture. I think this is a beautiful moss. It kind of reminds me of little baby ferns. So by keeping it simple just to this one beautiful moss, it's going to have a really nice impact on the terrarium. So we'll just mix in some of these spruce needles, some worm castings maybe, and then I'm going to save a couple just to top it. I think this is a beautiful mix. Let's take a close look. It's mostly that native soil and our potting mix, which is probably peat moss, but I love that perlite. I like the little spruce needles. I think that'll be fun. So this should have decent drainage, which is really what I was going for. Now we can start the fun part in building the terrarium. to drop in our rock and then set the tree right on top. Just move it over a scooch. That'll keep the tree from touching the glass. I'm going to just sneak in around with this a little extra soil. I'm not going to worry about getting that tree dirty. Keep an eye on our height. Don't want to overdo it. So before we add our moss, I'm going to do another dusting of pine needles, or spruce needles in this case. I have no idea if that's going to help the moss at all, but I'm just trying to replicate the conditions that I found it in. I really like the way that looks. And you want to keep your moss as whole as possible. The larger the piece, the more likely it is to survive. Try and just level that soil a touch. Gosh, that is such a beautiful moss. It's just like little baby ferns. I was so surprised when I stumbled across it. So if we can get it to survive in a terrarium with a little spruce, it's just going to be great. So that looks perfect. I really like the way that looks. So let's take a close look at this moss. It really is beautiful. It's just like a little baby fern. So the first thing I'm going to do is just kind of spray everything down. We'll just hopefully settle everything in. This will clean any dirt on the glass. And I'm using a spray bottle so that we don't overdo it. It's really easy to overwater these and then you're pretty much stuck with a bunch of extra moisture at the bottom. We're starting to get a little water here at the bottom. That's completely normal. But we don't want to add too much more until we let it soak into the soil. I really like that layered look. Isn't that cool? I just love how this turned out. This has been really interesting. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Stay tuned if you want to see updates on this interesting terrarium in a terrarium in a terrarium. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.